invested. I just hit my friend, told her catch me. I'ma lick her skin, she so precious.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm bringing you guys a bit of a different video. Obviously the past few weeks have been very raw, traumatic, shocking, triggering. Like, there's a million different words that I could use to describe what's going on in the world right now. I didn't want to come here and sit in front of a camera with a full face of makeup and talk about something so raw and something so like close to my heart. So that is why I just chose to do the most basic makeup I could possibly do, to come and sit on camera here and talk to you guys about this. One of the most relevant problems in the world right now that is relevant to me is Black Lives Matter, which is a movement basically pushing for the equal treatment of black people and the end of police brutality. Okay, so one of the first things I want to talk about is the idea of racism being something that like is something that only people of low IQ can have. That theory doesn't work, because some of the politicians, scientists, doctors, lawyers are heavily racist people. In America, there are a lot of law enforcement that are involved in the KKK. There are a lot of law enforcement members and politicians that are actually members of the KKK. So for them to have gone through school and education and all of that, they must have had some form of intelligence, some form of understanding of the world. Racism is something that has transgressed over generations and generations and generations. It's not something that is like a naturally occurring problem. It's a thing that is taught. It's a thing that has been taught for generations and generations, and is why the world is a state that it is right now. I want to get into the different types of racists that exist, okay? Because there are the racists that are out and about, like the EDLs, the what do they call themselves? National Action, National Britain First, all of them people. Okay, there are those type of racists, and then there are the covert racists, the racists that are on, you know, they may have corporate jobs, they may be on LinkedIn, they may be joining Facebook groups that are maybe racist or xenophobic. It's important to know who these racist people are, and it's important to expose them. It's important to expose them because you want to remove them from a position of power that allows them to abuse people who they have this bias against. For example, if you have a doctor who is racist and maybe she doesn't believe that a black person is fully human being, she can now go ahead and use that bias to prescribe the wrong or incorrect or inaccurate drugs to that person just because of the colour of their skin. Another thing that's also very interesting, which I'll leave links to in the description, is about how there are two different types of blood pressure tablets, or not blood pressure, but hypertension tablets used for people in the UK. One particular type is only used for black people, and doctors make that discretion on their own. So racism is a thing that affects all sectors of life. It's not just someone calling you the N-word. It's not just someone looking at you funny when you get off the bus. It's not just going into a shop and getting followed around by a security guard. It's some people that is people up there that genuinely, like, a large part of their lives are dedicated to destroying black lives, is to destroying people of colour and their lives. You know, you may get some people who try to argue the other side of the coin and say, oh well, putting them in danger is not right, putting them in you know, releasing all of their personal information affects them as well as their families. And I don't have any sympathy for that, because I wake up every day and apparently, because of the colour of my skin, people believe that I shouldn't be alive, people believe that I shouldn't be here, people believe that I should be raped, people believe that I deserve to be domestically abused. And bearing in mind, these things that I'm now listing are not things that have come from white racist people. These are things that have come from black men on Twitter maybe a few years ago. So until you can show me that you no longer have those feelings and you've actually learnt from that, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear I grew up in a Nigerian household. I don't want to hear my boyfriend's sister's cousin's dog is black. I don't want to hear it. The only thing I want to see and hear is changed behaviour. It's also important to acknowledge black people's role in allowing racism to cultivate and to grow in certain environments. Our culture is very unique in the sense that it's a culture that has basically been fused with mainstream urban culture, London culture, and it's the same in America. Like, African American culture has fused with pop culture completely. Like, they're indistinguishable now, which is why cultural appropriation is such a problem in America. People believe that you can take certain elements from our culture and you know, it allows everybody from anywhere to participate in our culture. It allows anybody from anywhere to take from our culture, to use our slang, to use our language, to wear our clothes, to take over our spaces. Look at Tim Westwood, look at Charlie Sloth. These are just two that I know about myself personally that are like the most popular non-black people in black spaces at this point in time. So we are a very unique race in that we tend to let people into our culture, and we tend to let people into doing things that they wouldn't try to do to other people. They wouldn't even think of attempting amongst other races and other cultures. But because we as a race are just so, like, I feel like we're very forgiving people, and it's to our own detriment, because now we have a problem where like our cultures have all fused together into this London urban culture. I also want to talk about the difference between racism and racial prejudice. Racial prejudice is sort of when you have like an aversion towards a group based on maybe experience that you've had with a member of that race or members of that race, or something that you've heard. Maybe the media has pushed an agenda about a certain group of people, and you've just believed that agenda and taken it at face value. Racism is something completely different. Racism is, in addition to racial prejudice, is also this systemic racism. It is industrial, scientific, on all levels. Basically, it's when you treat people who are not like you different to how you would treat yourself and people who do look like you. That is like the simplest explanation. But the difference between racism and racial prejudice is that racial prejudice may be a thing where you've been affected by it for one day. You walk past someone on the street, just like how me and Lauren did a couple months ago in Leicester, and someone shouts at you, "Oh, you've got big nigger lips." Racism is the systematic and deliberate destroying of black lives or people of colour's lives, using government structures, using private firms, using authority basically to impose sanctions and make life harder for people of colour. This for all the people who scream, "You're racist for calling me a racist. I'm not a racist. It's racist that you even think that I'm more racist."
Excuse me. You people have started again. You have started again.
You are still in fact a racist. You just happen to have a complex whereby you like to flip it around on other people. Carla has spoken about recently, actually I don't think he even spoke about it recently. I think it was in a video of him on a talk show a few years ago that resurfaced when he did his Instagram live a couple of weeks back. So there is a class war happening in England right now between the upper class and the working class. However, this war has been twisted and it's been turned into a thing where the upper class have turned the working class people against each other, in a divide and conquer sort of strategy, whereby basically they have made us believe that it is the fault of the other working class people rather than the upper class people for us being poor. The reason why they've managed to orchestrate it so well is because they have the use of the British media, they have the use of the uneducated. They take advantage of the fact that there are so many people in the UK who are uneducated, and there are so many people in the UK who are even descendants of people who are like prominent racists. So you've already got these people who are like predisposed, let's say, to being a racist. All that has to happen is someone to come along and put that very idea in their head. Got the lower class or the working class white people blaming people of colour who are also working class, blaming black people who are also mostly working class, for their problems and for the reason as to why they can't move up from being working class to... It's literally one of the greatest like scams this country has run. That's when you start to understand why there are so many people, there are so many Britain First, so many EDLs, so many national actions and all of that. And the reason why they do silly things like one of them urinated on Keith Palmer's memorial, which is the murdered policeman. One of them urinated on his memorial in central London at their counter protest that they had, even though it wasn't a counter protest because no one from Black Lives Matter ever showed up to that thing. But anyway, I'm not going to sit here and tell you why saying the N-word is bad. I'm not going to sit here and tell you why doing blackface is bad. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the history of minstrel shows, because quite frankly there is so much on the internet about it already. I don't need to sit here and tell you about it when it's a Google search away. However, I will explain to you what being black is, because I feel like for a lot of my non-black friends and a lot of my white friends, they don't seem to understand what is so different about my experience compared to theirs. Being a black person means that you are an expert on race. Basically means that everyone expects you to know what you're talking about when it comes to racism. Only people who have experienced racism realistically have an experience and can speak about racism. Not every black person has experienced racism. So do you see what the problem is here? Being a black person also means that there are certain conversations that people will have with you purposefully for the sake of the fact that your skin is a certain colour. So I've been in many situations. Many men had their eyes on me. I've been in too many situations where I've gone to someone's house and immediately as soon as I get there, the conversation switches from, oh, what was you doing on Sunday, to, oh, and I want to go to Africa and I want spicy food and yeah, jollof rice and I tried to cook jerk chicken the other day. And I'm sitting here like, if I weren't here, would you still be saying all of these things that you're saying? Like, it gets very, very emotionally draining. But these are all things called microaggressions, and they're things that people don't tend to realise that they do. It's subliminal, unconscious racism, and it's actually very damaging. It's one of the most damaging forms of racism. Even if you have, as a black person, experienced racism, and you do know a bit about what you're talking about, it's not fair for non-black people to expect every single black person they meet to want to speak about racism. It's not fair for non-black people to assume that every black person that they see wants to talk about race all the time, wants to talk about racism, even at all, let alone all the time. Like, some people actually find it very traumatizing and very triggering to even speak about racism and the experiences that they've had personally. Being black is waking up and understanding that literally, like, you can be killed for the color of your skin. Nothing else other than the color of your skin. And it was something that I didn't necessarily come to a realization with until very recently. And I feel like that is kind of one of the reasons why I was so pushed to make this video, because I realized that it's now getting to the point where it's coming so close to home. It's affecting me. I still want to see justice for Shukri Abdi. Breonna Taylor's murderers have still not been arrested. So I just want to remind you guys to beware of businesses and corporations who right now are doing what we call performative activism, which is basically pandering to the masses. So they will go ahead and change their name, change their icon. Think about Aunt Jemima, you know, and Uncle Ben's. Even Johnson's saying that they were going to finally start making dark-toned skin plasters, yes. Dark-toned plasters for people of darker complexions, because they've only ever made that same one nude colour for as long as I've been alive, and apparently for 100 years. So, why am I calling it performatism? Because you took 100 years to not even change anything, but to make an addition to your original line. You've made so much money off of this line that you've had for over 100 years. You saw no reason. Last year, when people were getting murdered, you didn't think to change it. The year before that, when people were getting murdered, you didn't think to change it. 2017, when Trayvon Martin got shot, you didn't think to change it. It's now in 2020 that people are out in the streets, fighting for their lives, crying for their lives. There's kids out on the street crying, begging for their lives. That's now when you want to introduce a new plaster colour. A lot of these companies recently in America have been making Juneteenth, which is a holiday when basically the slaves in Texas found out they were free after 2 years of already being free legally. Anyway, so beware of these companies making things like Juneteenth a public holiday, a paid holiday or whatever, because and I don't know if this is intentional or whether it's just a byproduct of like life, I don't know, society, capitalism. But a lot of right-wing media and a lot of right-wing activists will take the fact that these companies are now making changes to accommodate more people as basically the stripping of their rights and the stripping of free speech and the stripping of freedom, and we can't have this anymore, and we can't have anything, and you know, all of the other ridiculous things that they say on Twitter. I don't even want to repeat some of the things that they say because it's just so ridiculous. So, you know, I don't know if they deliberately do these things on purpose to trigger those people as a way of derailing our movement. It's usually you know, the conservative group let's call them that, the conservative group who are not in support of Black Lives Matter, not in favour of Black Lives Matter, which I'm not gonna sit here and say I understand it, but the conservative like people, even Republicans, like all of them, they're very interested in the economy. So what they're seeing right now is we just had a pandemic, and on top of that now we're protesting. There's a revolution about to happen. We can't really afford to have this happen. Now, where they mess up, where there's a cognitive disconnect, is in the fact that Black Lives Matter more than the economy. And now I don't know how you've lost humanity, how you've lost touch with your sense of self that much to the point where you can't see that is true, or you can try and argue that is not the case, but apparently we've reached that far. We genuinely have a real problem in the world, in that people do not see Black people as human beings. Like, we have not been deemed fully human beings for, I think, longer than 100 years. I'm pretty sure it was less than 100 years ago that in America, Black people were seen as 3/5 of a human being. So they've still got this ideology in their mind. Now, do you see where this can be dangerous in healthcare? Can you see where this can be dangerous in law enforcement? And what hurts me is the fact that people are louder, their voices are louder in condemning the actions of protesters than they are in the support of lives, and in the support of charities and donations and bail funds. Like, anyway, in conclusion, Black Lives Matter, donate to bail funds, and justice for Breonna Taylor. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't think I made a single joke in this video. I might have made one because I am like that, but hopefully you guys took something from this video. I'm gonna have a whole heap of resources in the description box for you guys if you want to learn more about Black Lives Matter or about any of the things that I've spoken about today in this video. Please don't forget to leave a like and leave a comment if you wish to, I guess. Thanks for watching my video, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all. I'm blickety black, blacker than